Evil has returned to Haddonfield, and in a big way. Here's your look at the NECA Toys. This is the Halloween Michael Myers quarter-scale figure. It's been 40 years since Laurie Strode survived a vicious attack from crazed killer Michael Myers on Halloween night. Now she faces a terrifying showdown when Michael returns to Haddonfield, Illinois, but this time Laurie is ready for him. Figure includes knife hammer, victim head, and interchangeable hands. Now, there's a whole lot to cover on this larger size version of Michael. Before we do that, though, let's have a look at how tall the figure stands, taking the tape measure and putting it to what I believe to be the top of his hair. We'll stop it right there. There we go. According to the readout, quite tall is Michael. He stands 19 inches in height. Switching that over to centimeters, you're looking at the figure standing 48.3 centimeters tall. Of course, I know that's not the easiest gauge to tell how tall a figure is, so we'll go ahead and bring in the Michael Myers, the regular 7-inch Michael, and we'll put him down with his larger counterpart. Now, if we look down, way down there, Michael Myers only goes to about mid-thigh for the quarter-scale release. There's a whole lot more of Michael to be had here. And it really does put things in perspective when you see how small these figures are, and to know that those are regular scale figures, to really know how much bigger these quarter scale figures actually are. For the figure's accessories, Michael comes included with the bloodied hammer, and we'll do some comparisons side by side because they pretty much have all the same accessories that the smaller version of Michael had. But get a gander at how much bigger that hammer is versus the smaller hammer that came with the regular scaled Michael. Does definitely put things much more in perspective. Speaking of perspective, larger perspective sizing of these accessories also affords it some added details that the smaller one just simply can't do. While this one actually comes across almost as if the head of the hammer is red, it's only because it's soaked in blood. You can kind of get a little bit more pattern work and the intricate little tricklings of blood on the larger scale, and it looks a little bit more realistic than the smaller counterpart. I also noticed, though, that the handle, it seems a different color. This one right here has more brownish of a color tint, whereas this one actually comes across a little bit more gray. I'd have to go back and rewatch Halloween, as certainly we would be doing here in this household. Every October, we're going to try to get through the entire Halloween franchise. Large feat, I'm sure, measured by most, but I think I'm going to do it. Anyways, I'd have to go back and see whether the hammer is aged so much that it actually has more of a bleached handle than the actual one of the quarter scale. But you can definitely see there's a whole lot more detailing, a whole lot more happening on the larger version. You can almost even see how they've wedged. When they put the hammer head down, they usually take a wood wedge and they stick it in the top and hammer it down so that you broaden the tip here so the head of the hammer doesn't fall off. They usually do that with axes as well. You get much more the indicator of how a real hammer is built versus its smaller counterpart. Speaking of smaller counterparts, get a load of the smaller butcher knife that comes included with the original Michael, the smaller Michael, and then the one that comes with the quarter scale. This one doesn't even get any bit of the blood. It gets afforded nothing. While the larger version of the actual knife does get quite the generous dolloping of blood. And you can see the way it's been streaked across the blade, as if he's actually stabbed and sliced this way as opposed to across. I don't know too much about stabbing individuals, and let's just leave it at that. But I do like the fact that it's a dark, really crimson red. They've really perfected the coloring of blood. The one thing I noticed, though, about the knives, if you look at them side by side, the rivet points are not painted here. And I don't know if they're supposed to be painted. I feel like they might have left them off completely, because the smaller handle of the knife on the smaller knife does have those rivet points painted in silver. Maybe this one has just been left off altogether. And while the larger quarter scale Michael doesn't come included with the pumpkin, he still comes included with Officer Francis, the severed head that is lit up in the film. Unfortunately, sad to report, this one doesn't light up. I think an opportunity could have been had there for the fact that this is a larger portrait of Francis's head, that I feel like they could have actually lit this one up. You can see, though, it gets afforded much more detailing. You'll probably hear this comment made throughout the course of this video. Detailing definitely gets a little bit more embellished, I would say, in the larger formats than the smaller ones. Things like teeth become a little bit more clear and easier to see. You can see even like the tendons on the side of its mouth, as Francis's mouth has just been cut open, giving a mock jack-o'-lantern look. Again, they're not that much different from one another, but there's definitely a whole lot more detail to be had on the larger version. And there's what it looks like on the inside. Let's just try not to drop it. Try not to drop it. That's what the inside looks as well. I suppose if you wanted to, the smaller one might be a little bit more difficult, but I guess you could still do it. If you took like one of those tea lights, the ones that are battery powered that flicker, you could probably put Francis's head on that one. You most definitely could do it on the larger variety. And I guess they made it in such a way because it is an empty chasm inside. I mean, you could really put it on your finger and serve it as a puppet. That's rather grotesque. You could even like stick your finger through and pretend like it's a tongue. Anyways, I digress. What you could do, though, is you could probably put this head, on Officer Francis, most definitely on a tea light, and you could illuminate it. Something I probably realize in hindsight now I probably should have incorporated for this part of this review, but still, though, really nice detailing to be had here. Not the most intricate of cuts. Michael really didn't sit down and ponder to himself, how did I want to make a jack-o'-lantern tonight? He sort of just kind of hacked and slashed until he got what a close enough proximity to what a jack-o'-lantern would be in his head. Michael also gets a series of interchangeable hands, 5 to be exact. I know you're only looking at 4, I assure you there's another one. He comes with relaxed hands, or one relaxed hand, and then one partially gripping hand for holding the knife. He also comes with a other relaxed hand, which, strange enough, it's actually on the same side. You would have almost thought that they would have given you a hand to go on this side, also of the relaxed variety. It's a slightly more darker color to his skin. The blood is much more prevalent here on the larger variety than the smaller variety, and I want to do some detail comparisons of those in a second. The other thing he comes included with is the knife holding hand for this hand here. I guess if you really had 2 knives, you could in theory have 2 wielding hands, and we're just going to go ahead and put this into his hand. You do have to kind of pry the fingers away from the palm in order to get the actual handle stuck in place. Now, you may be of the variety, kind of like the toilet paper debate of over and under. Some people prefer their Michael Myers to have their knives up. Some people prefer their knives to be down. I'll leave it to you guys to decide. So he does come with the gripping hand really on both sides of the sockets, depending on which way you want to display the knife on this particular figure. And I know I said 5 hands. I wasn't mistaken. He does actually come with a 5th hand. I wanted to leave this one last, because this is the hand that's missing the 2 digits out of the possible 5 digits that a human hand should have. This one I want to do a comparison to the smaller counterpart hand, because it definitely is a unique hand that he kind of stands out from the rest of the pack. One thing that you can see, first and foremost, is as well the coloring of the hands is different. This has a much more reddish color to it, but I would imagine this is just repeated staining of blood on Michael's hands. He does do quite a service through the entire Halloween, the new Halloween film. But he does have, of course, the missing digits later in, and a good opportunity to showcase just how bad the damage is when you look at them side by side. The smaller hand does a good enough service for what it is, but boy, oh boy, you really get the more mangled gore factor elevated to factor 10 when you look at how gruesome it looks on the quarter scale release. It's got more of a sheen as well to it, so it reflects the light a little bit better. It looks wet, and it looks like it's just been done. The smaller hand is still good, but boy, oh boy, there's a lot of extra details on the larger hand that gets missed, sadly, on the smaller version. Generally, when it comes to the head portraits of quarter scale figures, I like to take the head off, because it's a whole lot easier to hold it and show you guys some close-up details. What a phenomenal looking head portrait. To their credit, and I feel like I sometimes don't give credit nearly enough to these quarter scale format figures, even though space is limited for me. causing me not to pick up as many quarter scale figures as I'd like. There's something to be had for the sheer level of detail and intricate paintwork that they can incorporate to these larger versions of their figures that they can't simply pull off in the smaller format. We're going to do a couple of those size comparisons and comparisons in detail to these smaller figure head sculpts. I don't know if this one I would say is a complete, mirror copy. Certainly the sculpt is vastly different. But looking at the two head portraits, there's also this one here as well. This one does have the little bit more of a peaked hair. So I guess this one may be the closest one we can compare, like for like, if you will. Or in this case, difference for difference. There's definitely a lot of difference to be had here. When you look at them side by side now, you really can't help but notice how much additional yellow and kind of like a beige color that's been added to the smaller head portrait that really is nowhere to be found on the larger head. It has all the little indentations and imperfections that the aged mask would have, and it still has, of course, the knitting needle insertion that would have been happened to the side of the neck. I must admit, though, the head portrait on the larger variety does look really good. The hair, I also like the fact that they added lighter brown color to it, which is something that is completely omitted from the smaller variety. The smaller hair almost just looks like it's one color brown, almost like a chestnut brown, but it's these extra little highlights, I got to admit, is really going and adding a little bit of extra pizzazz to this particular head portrait. I like the fact that there is that lighter brown to it, because much like the mask, the hair also, over the time that the mask has existed, has become like straw-like and just really matted and tacky. And of course the hair would be lighter in color. You really, again, appreciate how much detail they can put into these larger portraits that, again, sadly, the smaller heads just simply can't pull off. Comparing aside, I certainly don't want to spend the entire video doing comparisons left to right. I just want to show you like all the little carvings and textured work that they've managed to put into this head portrait. The eye was dead, this eye here, in the movie. The smaller figure, unfortunately, just doesn't convey that as well as the larger one. You can just see how sick that eye looks. And I don't mean sick in a cool street way. There's no life whatsoever happening behind that eye. It almost looks like it's got a film over top of it. And you can even see the scarring of the area around Michael's eye that would have been underneath this mask. The lips are slightly discolored, almost a purplish gray that's been incorporated in there. But there's very little to no color. Let me correct myself by saying that. There's still color in it, but it doesn't have the yellow color that the smaller head had. This kind of keeps it more the chalk white surface that you would have had in the film. It really is a stellar looking head sculpt. It is made of a softer plastic, and like it would be accurately in the film, the interior of the mask is more of a flesh tone, as of course the mask would have been painted over an original William Shatner mask. This one doesn't feel as much like a William Shatner mask. It would have almost even been fun if they had taken a mold of William Shatner's face now and aged that. I think that would have been fun. It would have made a more heavier looking Michael, but I think that would have been awesome too. All those little etchings and scratchings done to the surface of the plastic. I could really spend a whole lot of time looking at this mask for the sake of this review, obviously, and to spare you guys. I'm not going to do that, but gosh darn it, that's a nice looking head portrait. One last comparison we'll do before we examine the quarter scale Michael a little bit more is I want to show you the color difference between the two boilers. Now, he more has a blue boiler in this particular film than he has maybe in the previous films. Of course, we could go back now and look at the original Halloween and see more of a greenish tinted boiler versus the originally suspected blue. But he definitely has more blue color scheme here. And you can see how drastically different the smaller is to the larger. I think the larger is much more accurate to the film. It's a more paler version of blue, and you've got some additional kind of aging that's just been kind of brushed in there. The blue almost now in the smaller figure looks not quite unrealistic, but it definitely doesn't look as movie accurate. It has also a sheen to it that I kind of wish favored more so like this, where it was more of a matte treatment instead of a bit of the sheen that we're actually getting on the smaller version here. So holding the figure in hand so I can show you guys some close-up details here. The boiler does look quite nice. You got the front pocket flap down there and the one entryway wound to the top corner of his shoulder. Higher collar on this particular figure. It's again made of a softer plastic. And then you've got the blue t-shirt underneath there. I must really admit, I like the coloring on this boiler a little bit more than this smaller 7-inch version. You can see that there's some additional kind of, not quite, it kind of looks a little bit like a greenish tinted beige that's been added to the surface, and it's not completely all the surface of the boiler suit. You can see that there's just a little bit of extra wear and tear to that. I like that. Some nice natural wrinkles forming around the legs as we move further and further down. The boots naturally drape across the boots here. One thing I don't like, and it's not something you're really going to see, is that the way that they have attached the feet, they've attached it to blue pegs. Unfortunately, as a result of that, and unless you want to just chalk it up to the fact that Michael has blue socks, the boots would be a little higher than this, so I kind of wish that they could have painted that black to match the boots. We flip the boots upside down so you guys can see the treads. They actually have put peg points, peg holes on the undersides of Michael's feet. I suppose if you wanted to, you could use a display stand. Haven't tried that just yet, but I guess it might add some additional stability for this particular figure. Spin it around, we'll have a look on the back of it. Again, more of the same stuff that you would expect from the smaller variety. In fact, a lot of the molds seem to share similar traits to one another. These little natural creases and openings here on the actual suit seem to mirror the ones that are on the smaller version as well. So I can't help but think perhaps there is some carryover of mold from the larger variety, the larger scale, to the smaller scale. We'll continue to work our way down. Like the pants do seem like they are similar as well. The natural draping and the natural wrinkling seems to occur on both instances here. For the figure's articulation, it does have a ball joint. So you see some nice detailing done to the under neck section right underneath his mask. It hinges up and down quite a bit actually. Hinges all the way up this way, all the way down. You can rock it back and forth, and you can rotate the head all the way around. Luckily, the collar being made of a softer material doesn't hinder it at all the movement of the head either way, up and down, or really if you wanted to rotate it all the way around. The shoulders on the arms allow the arms to hinge out by about a 45-degree angle. And you can move the arms forward, and you move the arms back. He has not only a single hinge right there, but he also has a double hinge, allowing the arms to give you a double bend. A little bit tighter on this particular figure, but I would much rather tighter joints than joints that are excessively loose. The hands also rotate all the way around depending on which hands you would like to use for this release of Michael. And because this is a rubber suit, body, basically this part here is all rubber. You can see that it's got a lot of give to it. Unfortunately though, it does limit any waist articulation. Not that you really necessarily need waist articulation. He's not an agile killer, but this whole section is kind of enclosed in this rubber suit, so you're not going to be able to move much there. The legs split out, and as you're splitting them, unnaturally you may be hearing some ratcheted clicking. Don't be jarred by that. Don't think that you're actually doing damage to the figure. It does have a natural ratcheted joint. Sort of a precautionary measure, I suppose, that NECA Toys incorporated into the figure to ensure that the figure's legs wouldn't get loose. With the size and the weight of these figures as they are, you really don't want to have the legs to get loose over time. And as a result, it seems like they put ratcheted joints on many of their quarter scale figures. As for the knees bend, and you can rotate also the lower leg. And then as for the feet rotate back and forth, and you can hinge them up and down. Not really, barely, well, a fair bit, I suppose, of ankle pivot. But I wouldn't jeopardize ankle pivoting this figure, because I feel like it just wouldn't be strong enough to stabilize the figure if you had him standing straight. One of the unfortunate downsides to these particular figures is because they are so large, you can't get overly creative with the way that you're displaying them. Unless you have them sitting against something, I think unless you just have them in straight up museum pose, anything after that may cause the figure to teeter back and forth and maybe eventually falling over. Now, there seems to be an increase of numbers of collectors collecting quarter-scale NECA figures than ever before. This isn't new. NECA's been making quarter scale figures for the longest of time, comic book characters and horror figures alike. But I can understand why there's people that love these so much. I may not collect every single thing that comes out simply just because I don't have the space, and every new purchase I pick up from NECA Toys, I realize have a little less space than what I started with. But there are fans out there like D. Knight, for example. When you walk into his room, a spectacular room of collectibles, your eyes would definitely focus their attention on a quarter scale version of Michael long before you'd spot a 7-inch version. So I can definitely understand why there's people like D. Knight, for example, that get and dig the quarter scale variety. Something that also NECA can put a little bit more into is detail. If you look at the detail in this guy versus the 7-inch counterpart, you can definitely see why there's so many people loving the quarter scale variety. This Michael has details that I never thought was possible on a regular plastic release of Myers. And definitely the detail and care that they put into his face, his one dead eye, and just overall like the sculpting of even his hands. The hand that has the 2 missing fingers has a lot more detailing that gets afforded to it than, like I said, the 7-inch variety. So I can definitely see, while I may not pick up every single thing, a Michael Myers quarter scale figure definitely was on the menu, and as soon as I found out it was going to be released, I had to pick it up and I had to add it to my collection. Now that I have this guy on display, which will be displayed, I might also add after this review, this is something that probably will not be out just simply for Halloween, but all year round. This Michael is very impressive, and if you haven't picked it up already, and you're a fan of Michael Myers, do yourself a service and add this one to your collection today. If you did manage to pick up this one for yourself, let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of the new quarter scale Halloween Michael Myers from the newest Halloween film. We're all now going to be getting some new Halloween films in the pipeline as well. Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends. I think Halloween Kills is being filmed as we speak. Halloween Ends is going to be right after that. It's a good time to be a Halloween fan, and it's a good time to also be a NECA Collectors fan because of some of the cool stuff that they're releasing right now. Just got ourselves a Halloween 2 Michael Myers, a Dick Warlock Michael Myers, and I've now, with the addition of the very tall quarter scale version of Michael Myers that we had looked at in this review, there's a lot of cool stuff coming out from NECA Toys, all Halloween related. Let's hope it doesn't stop. Like I said, if you guys did manage to pick up this one for yourself, let me know down below in the comment section what you guys think of this figure. Make sure as well you hit that subscribe button and swing next door to that bell notification, and make sure you turn it on because when new videos are coming onto this channel, you don't want to be the person that's missing out. And for the month of Spottober, if you think that this is going to be it for videos, I got to tell you, there's a whole lot of stuff coming your way for the rest of this month. So keep your peepers peeled and stay tuned to this channel. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.